I stood beneath the stage lights as applause echoed around me, the brightness almost painful. Somewhere in the crowd, 3 vacant chairs screamed louder than any cheer. My phone buzzed once. No praise. No regret. My parents had chosen to miss my graduation to deal with another one of my sister's emotional crises. Right then, something unsettling became clear: affection in my family came with conditions. I smiled for the cameras, returned to my seat alone, and later that night folded my gown in complete silence. I didn't argue. I didn't demand answers. I made a quiet decision, one so subtle it barely felt real. I had no idea that choice would later unravel hidden truths and leave my parents scrambling for explanations. My name is Quinn Carter, and growing up, I was labeled the reliable one, the resilient daughter who never asked for much. I was raised in a peaceful-looking suburb outside Detroit. From the outside, our home seemed perfect: manicured grass, framed family photos, a dining table polished every weekend. Inside, everything revolved around my older sister, Vanessa, my parents' greatest worry and greatest pride. Vanessa was always delicate, sensitive, someone who needed extra attention. My parents repeated it so often it became a rule no one questioned. If she struggled, plans vanished. If she wanted something, everyone adjusted. I learned early that harmony in our house meant stepping aside. So I did. I learned how to fade without ever fully disappearing. Our birthdays told the clearest story. Vanessa's were extravagant: balloons touching the ceiling, packed restaurants, laughter spilling outside. Mine were modest. A grocery store cake. A hurried hug. "We'll make it special next year," my mom would promise, already distracted. Next year never arrived. At dinner, if I reached for the last piece of food, my dad would gently intervene. "Let your sister have it," he'd say softly, as if offering guidance. "You're strong. You don't need much." I accepted that. I believed strength meant wanting less. School became my escape. I worked relentlessly, not for praise, but because success felt like proof that I mattered. When I brought home awards, my parents nodded as if it was expected. "That's nice, Quinn," my mom would say before turning to Vanessa. And when Vanessa had a bad day, everything else paused. Still, I held on to one small hope: graduation. 4 years of sacrifice and exhaustion had to count for something. Surely, that moment would finally be about me. I pictured them in the crowd, my mom in tears, my dad applauding too loudly. I imagined being chosen, just once. That hope made the empty seats unbearable. Standing there, smiling for strangers, I didn't just feel abandoned. I felt naive for thinking anything would change. Looking back, the warning signs were there. I just chose not to see them. The night before graduation, my mom called. Her voice was hushed and hurried, the tone she always used when Vanessa was involved. "Your sister's struggling," she said. "She's overwhelmed. We might have to stay back." Stay back. Not "we'll try." Not "we'll be there." Just a suggestion, as if my graduation were flexible. I sat on my bed, staring at my neatly folded gown. "It's one day," I said carefully. "It happens once." She sighed. "You know how she is, Quinn. You're strong. You'll understand." That sentence carried more weight than any argument. "You're strong." It wasn't reassurance, it was judgment. I convinced myself they'd come anyway. Vanessa always had emotional storms, and life always moved on. Surely, this time would be different. Graduation morning arrived in eerie silence. No calls. No updates. I got dressed alone, adjusted my cap, and ignored the knot in my chest. When I finally asked where they were, the reply was short and detached: "We can't come. Your sister needs us." Nothing more. No pride. No apology. Later, in the stadium, I watched families lean across rows, wave, shout names, lift phones. The sun burned my shoulders while an icy clarity settled in. This wasn't an emergency. It was a ranking. And I knew my place. As I returned to my seat after my name was announced, something inside me closed quietly, like a door shutting without a sound. I thought of every time I'd waited. Every time I'd earned approval instead of expecting it. Every time I'd settled for second to keep the peace. That night, alone in my apartment, I replayed the message, "Your sister needs us." And for the first time, I asked myself a question I'd always avoided. What if nothing ever changes? I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I opened my closet, pulled out an old suitcase, and set it on the floor. Because in that moment, something frightening finally clicked into place. If I stayed, would keep fading. I didn't make an announcement or send a dramatic message. I didn't demand answers. The next morning, I simply woke up early and let the silence speak for me. The apartment felt tight, like it was waiting with me. I packed carefully, warm clothes, my laptop, notebooks filled with late-night notes and half-finished thoughts. I stopped at an old photograph, my grandfather and me on a porch, his hand resting easily on my shoulder. I slid it into my bag and closed the suitcase. I drove west without turning on the radio. The road's steady hum was the only sound. By the time I reached Grand Rapids, the tension in my chest had cooled into something calm and sharp. My grandfather opened the door before I knocked, as though he already knew. He didn't question me. He poured coffee, set the mug down, and gave me space to breathe. Days passed, and the silence from my parents grew deafening. No calls asking where I'd gone. No concern. Then the messages came, not about me, but about finances. A charge declined. A bill past due. Their confidence cracked, sliding into worry, then outright panic. That's when my grandfather finally explained. For years, he'd been quietly stepping in, covering gaps, paying bills when things fell short. He said it plainly, like it was nothing remarkable. He'd thought he was keeping the family balanced. He believed my parents were treating both daughters the same. Something broke open inside me, not pain, but understanding. The stability I grew up with wasn't built. It was borrowed. And suddenly, their behavior toward me made sense. It's easier to overlook the child you believe won't fall apart. My phone buzzed again, another message asking if I'd moved money or touched an account by accident. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down. That evening, my grandfather and I sat on the porch as dusk settled. He told me he was done stepping in, done repairing damage he hadn't caused. They'll have to figure it out themselves, he said quietly. For the first time, I saw that my leaving wasn't just escape. It was a shift, support removed, balance changed. And somewhere between the churring insects and the cool night air, I understood this wasn't about distance anymore. It was about consequences arriving at last. The unraveling didn't happen instantly. It came in pieces, the way unstable things always do once the pressure holding them together disappears. At first, my parents' messages were cautious, almost polite. "Hey, did you adjust anything with the accounts? Something didn't go through, just checking." I stayed silent. Not to punish them, but because answering one question would invite many more, all circling a truth they refused to face. 2 days later, the tone shifted. My mom called 3 times in one afternoon. When I listened to the voicemail, her voice was tight, rushed, the sound she used when she was trying to stay calm for Vanessa. "We're a bit confused," she said. "Some payments are late. Your dad thought maybe you noticed something. You're good with this stuff. Good with details." Even now, I was being assigned the role of fixer, the one who kept things running quietly in the background. That night, my grandfather asked me to sit with him at the kitchen table. He spoke slowly, without cushioning the truth. "I told them I'm done helping financially," he said. "No more stepping in. No more cleaning up after them." I stared at the tabletop, the worn lines catching the light. "They're going to panic," I said. He nodded once. They already have. The panic arrived faster than I expected. Before the week ended, my father showed up at my grandfather's house without warning. He stood on the porch, hands buried in his pockets, jaw set. He looked smaller, less sure of himself. "We need to talk," he said. I didn't invite him inside. We stayed there, the door open behind me, the afternoon heavy and still. "What's happening?" he asked, though his expression already knew. "Everything's slipping. We're behind on bills." I waited. I needed to hear what came next. He let out a sharp breath. "Your sister's struggling. You know that. We never meant to hurt you." The familiar pattern. Excuses dressed up as explanations. "You didn't miss an appointment," I said calmly. "You missed my graduation." His jaw tightened. "We said we'd celebrate later." I felt steady, not angry, not sad. "Certain. You always say later." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic. Families make sacrifices." "For who?" I asked. The question stayed between us. He had no answer. That evening, Vanessa made sure I couldn't ignore her. She caught me outside the campus library as students poured out for the day. Her hair was perfect, her posture set for attention. "You really did this," she said loudly, crossing her arms. "Mom's falling apart. Dad hasn't slept in days, and it's your fault." People nearby slowed, curiosity obvious. I didn't flinch. "Because I moved out?" I asked. "No," she shot back. "Because you walked away. You knew they relied on that help. You knew how unstable everything was." Unstable. That word again, always shielding her, never me. "You chose to miss my graduation," I said calmly. "That was your decision." Her eyes burned. "I needed them. I was breaking down." "And I wasn't?" I asked quietly. She laughed, sharp and dismissive. "You're always okay. You've always been okay." Something settled firmly inside me. "That's the story you survive on." Her voice rose. "You're selfish. You couldn't wait. You had to make everything about yourself." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "I made it about truth. We're both adults. And I'm done funding your comfort." She stared at me, not hurt, but stunned that I wasn't yielding. A few students lingered nearby, pretending to scroll while listening. Vanessa noticed and shifted, her expression softening into practiced distress. "You're destroying this family," she said louder. "You'll regret this." I stayed calm. If one person stepping back causes everything to collapse, then it was never stable to begin with. She opened her mouth, then stopped. For once, there was no line to fall back on. The final reckoning came that weekend. My parents asked for a family meeting at the house in Detroit. I agreed, only because my grandfather came with me, not to intervene, but to observe. The living room was unchanged, framed photos, tidy furniture, the same carefully maintained illusion. My mother began crying before anyone sat down. "We don't understand why you're doing this," she said. "After everything we've sacrificed for you." "You didn't come to my graduation," I replied. "And you never apologized." My father slammed his hand against the couch. "We were handling a crisis." "A meltdown," I corrected. "One you chose over me." Vanessa scoffed. "You're twisting things." "No," my grandfather said evenly, breaking his silence. The room froze. "She's finally speaking honestly." They turned toward him, startled. "I've been covering your finances for years," he continued. "I believed I was supporting both granddaughters. What I see now is favoritism I helped enable." My mother went pale. "Dad, that's not fair." "It's accurate," he said. "You treated her resilience as permission to neglect her." My father stood. "So that's it?" You're just cutting us off and letting everything fall apart. I'm letting you face the results of your own choices, my grandfather answered calmly. The room erupted, blame, defensiveness, Vanessa crying loudly now, demanding to know how she was supposed to manage. I waited until the noise burned itself out. I'm not here to bargain, I said. I'm here to be clear. They all looked at me. I didn't leave to hurt you, I continued. I left because staying was breaking me. I won't move back. I won't fix your problems. And I won't carry guilt for burdens that were never mine. My mother whispered, so you're choosing this over your family? I met her eyes. I'm choosing myself, for the first time. The silence that followed felt final. Walking out, I didn't feel victorious. I felt unburdened. Behind me, the picture-perfect image fractured, and I didn't turn back to repair it. The aftermath wasn't explosive. It was gradual. Over the next weeks, messages slowed, then stopped. Panic turned into fatigue. Bills piled up. Plans quietly vanished. Neighbors who once smiled now avoided eye contact. Vanessa's struggles no longer drew an audience. Without someone holding everything together, the illusion lost its power. I stayed in Grand Rapids. Life became quieter, steadier. Mornings with coffee and stillness. Evenings with notebooks spread across the table, my grandfather reading nearby. I returned to my psychology work with a focus I'd never known. For the first time, I wasn't trying to earn space at anyone's table. I already had one. One afternoon, my mom sent a single message, not an apology, just a question about visiting someday. I didn't reply. Not from bitterness, from clarity. I learned that silence can be a boundary. My grandfather never said, "I told you so." He didn't need to. He just smiled when he saw me sleep better, laugh more freely, breathe easier. "You chose well," he said once. Even when it was difficult, he was right. The justice wasn't dramatic or cruel. It was simple. A system built on imbalance couldn't survive once I stopped supporting it. And in the quiet that followed, I felt something entirely new. Peace. Walking away didn't make me cold. It made me whole. I learned that self-respect isn't betrayal, and silence isn't weakness. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop shrinking for people who never intended to grow with you. If this story resonates, if you've ever been sidelined in your own family, know this, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. And if you want more real family stories like this, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.